Scott Ritter, let's start. We got to revisit the Polish missile scheme, shall we call it, because it seems like there was more to it than meets the eye, Scott.
Yeah, no, I've been called out on somebody's Substack, a gentleman named Andrew Korupko, and he basically says new evidence compels me to correct my conclusion about Poland. But there's no new evidence. He's citing as new evidence the pranksters that called up the Polish president and tended to be Macron, and of course the Polish president said, "I have no intention of starting a war with Russia. It was not going to happen." But the guy, he's like, therefore, since the Polish president told comedians that he had no intention of starting a war, you can't say that. And I'm like, but that doesn't change the fact that Poland tried to invoke Article 4 of the NATO Charter, knowing that it wasn't a Russian missile. Nothing anybody's saying changes this. This gentleman's like, Article 4, so what? NATO only goes to war under Article 4. NATO has never gone to war under Article 5, ever. No shots have been fired in anger under Article 5. NATO has invaded a lot of countries, done regime change under Article 4. Article 4 is the single most dangerous element of the NATO Charter because that's what allows NATO members to get together. It's supposed to be a defensive alliance. Article 4 allows NATO members to get together and go, who are we going to bomb this week? What offensive action can we take? Serbia, Libya, Afghanistan. And now Poland wants NATO under Article 4 to consider Ukraine. It didn't happen. The wiser heads wouldn't allow an Article 4 to be convened, but we didn't dodge the bullet because of Poland's temper tantrum over being attacked by a Ukrainian missile. Germany has now deployed 2 Patriot missile batteries to the Ukrainian-Polish border. Why is this a big deal? Because the Polish objective wasn't to create an incident right now. It's to start putting in place the pieces necessary for a future no-fly zone to be imposed over Ukraine. Probably when millions of Ukrainians come running to the Polish border in the very near future because they're being ordered out of their cities by their mayors who are saying, you're going to freeze to death. We ain't got no heat. You might as well go live in the village. And the villages are saying, we don't got enough firewood for you guys. So off they go to the border, and the Poles aren't going to let them in. Europe doesn't want them. The Ukrainians apparently are bad guests. So they're going to be stuck at the border. Now we have a humanitarian crisis, which is going to require, food, shelter, medical care, all this stuff. But nobody's going to want to go into Ukraine because of those dirty Russians, the ones who didn't attack Poland. And so they're going to say, well, in order to set up this humanitarian care, we need a humanitarian corridor with an air defense no-fly zone. Well, Germany just put in the pieces. They now have Patriot missile batteries whose air defense umbrella extends into Ukraine. The first prerequisite of a no-fly zone is to have air defense that can keep those dirty Russians out. This is dangerous. I know everybody's going, well, Scott, they didn't really do anything yet. Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to put on my air combatant hat. Used to be one of them. And I'm told I'm going to fly a mission into Western Ukraine. And I've got a German Patriot battery whose radar is tracking me at some point in time. And I'm in range of German Patriot missiles. I can guarantee you that I have an anti-Patriot package already ginned up. In case as I'm flying my mission, the Germans engage, bam, I'm going to take them out. Because I don't play the game of let the Germans shoot me down over Ukrainian airspace. Right. I play the game of if the Germans want to engage, the Germans get to die. And that's the game the Russians will play too. And now we have NATO versus Russia, the war everybody claims they don't want. Germany is literally the dumbest nation in the world. And Europe is stupid to allow Germans to send their military into Poland towards Russia. We've done this before. It didn't end well. I don't know why Germany thinks that, why they have such an urge to put their troops on Polish soil oriented towards Russia. Every time that happens, it ends badly. Last time it ended with Russian troops in Berlin. And if Germany wants to continue to play this game, maybe the Russians will have, a repeat, visit to Berlin. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this is really stupid and it's very dangerous. And yet people are just ignoring it. It's like, oh, it's okay. The Germans just put 2 Patriot missile batteries on the Ukrainian-Polish border. No big deal. Oh, it's a huge deal. And they're flying combat air sorties and combat air patrols over Polish territory. Again, German military aircraft flying combat air patrols over Poland. Wow, it's like we've gone back in time. But people are going to say, well, that's not a big deal. It's one step closer. It's incremental. It's a very dangerous situation. People just aren't waking up to it. And remember, this isn't because Russia sent an errant missile into Poland, because the Ukrainians deliberately fired a missile into Poland. And Europe's acting as if we have to blame the Russians for this. It's crazy.
So it looks to me, Scott, I mean, like, if that wasn't the plan all along, it appears to me that that was an offshoot of the plan. If the plan was, we'll draw NATO in by saying that they were attacked, but it seems to me you can always adjust the plan midstream. That doesn't work, and you're like, well, okay, we will escalate. It was a plan, because all of these are escalate. Now we're going to put anti-aircraft stuff on the border that can look into Ukraine, and at some point, if they fire at the Russians, I imagine they're going to see a couple of missiles come across and just flatten both of them. And then Article 5, we've been attacked. All they have to do is shoot first and say they didn't shoot, because they'll do that. They'll shoot first and say, oh no, we never fired a missile.
The interesting thing about Article 5, though, it isn't what everybody thinks it is. I mean, we got old Joe Biden up there giving his shaky Jake speech. It's a religious thing. We have a moral duty to do. I can't do it. I might get in trouble if I do my Biden imitation. I apologize for that. I'm not making fun of Joe Biden. But he's sitting there. It's a moral obligation to Article 5. We're standing by. Read it, Joe. Understand what Article 5 says. There ain't no requirement to do anything under Article 5. It simply says that an attack against one will be treated as an attack against all. But how do nations respond? They get to consider whether or not they want to do anything. And if they decide they want to do anything, it doesn't have to be military in nature. So Article 5, I can guarantee you this. If a German missile battery engages a Russian aircraft over Poland, a German missile battery in Poland engages a Russian aircraft over Ukraine, and the Russians take out that missile, there won't be World War III. There won't be, because NATO is not going to invoke Article 5. Because
you know what? Let me say this, guy.
It's not self-defense. The Germans engage. You do know that it's an act of war to target an aircraft with a radar that's linked to a weapon system. That's an act of war.
Yep.
That if I'm flying and you come up to me and you track me, you engage me with the radar, and your weapon goes active, I get to flip over, bam, fire off a round and take you out because you just attacked me. I don't have to wait for you to launch the missile.
Right.
Hint, Germany, turn off the radar. Seriously, don't turn it on. Because if you start tracking Russian aircraft and your missile batteries are up, and the Russians know that, they can take you out. And Article 5 will not be invoked. Guaranteed.
I don't think, I felt like this all along. And I saw an article similar. I don't think that the neocons in Washington are going to give up Chicago and Los Angeles in exchange for Warsaw. I don't think, to be quite frank, looking at the history of the neocons, when they have proxies and proxies get in a jam, they leave them hanging out to dry and they let them get crushed every time. They never come to their rescue. And let's be honest, a lot of, including the Germans, don't like the Poles anyway in Western Europe. Let's be honest about that. I don't think that if the Poles rustle something up here and cause some problems, and there's a missile going one way or the other, that Europe and DC are going to say, let's go in and start World War III. God only knows what happened. We know how this ends based on some schmucks in Poland. I don't think they do it anyway. Am I wrong?
No, I look, they're not going to go to war because Germany precipitously deployed. But let me back up on that. It's not like the Germans woke up today and went, oh my God, we have to deploy a missile battery. They had the plan already in
Right.
place.
Right.
The German leadership went, what? Oh, we're activating false flag scenario number 32. That requires op plan lunatic fringe 001. All right, let's implement lunatic fringe 001. Send the 2 missile batteries who've been training for this very event. Go ahead and tell them to execute the order and go. It's not like there's some German soldiers at home getting ready to celebrate German Thanksgiving. I don't think they do, but they like America, so some of them do. And they're like, Ma, put the turkey on hold. We suddenly have orders to go to Poland to defend the border against Ukrainian missiles. No, this was already planned. The Germans are merely executing something that they've already planned for. And I'm here to tell you right now that there are additional NATO plans. And what you're going to be seeing is Poland trying to get NATO to push as much air defense infrastructure forward into Poland so that if the time comes where they have to implement a no-fly zone to protect a humanitarian corridor, they have the resources right there ready to go. It's not going to be a week-long, drawn-out affair. This is a master plan by NATO or some members of NATO. And, I don't think the United States is on board, but at some point in time, Sullivan and Blinken and Miley and Austin have to go, whoa, we're sort of being sucked into the vortex of inevitable conflict. Do we really want this? Do we really want NATO to set up a no-fly zone into Ukraine, knowing the Russians are going to knock the snot out of them? And Russia will, because I'm telling you right now, it ain't Article 5 if you, NATO, go into Ukraine. There ain't no Article 5 protection. Just ask the Turks. You see, they went into Syria, got slapped around by the Russians a little bit, and they went, oh, Article 5. And everyone went, nope. They said, Article 4? And NATO went, no. So this is a dangerous situation where certain assumptions are being made by certain NATO members that things are going to happen. But I'm telling you right now, if you put a no-fly zone into Ukraine, Russia will knock the snot out of it, and NATO is going to do nothing about it because it's a provocative act. NATO isn't going to invoke Article 4. This would have to be a unilateral action by NATO members, and you don't get protected by the charter in that point in time. And as you said, there's Americans sitting there going, I don't want to lose Chicago, Des Moines, Pittsburgh, because some German, Polish, Latvian, Lithuanian, 1945 anti-Soviet neo-Nazi fantasy is being played out in Eastern Europe right now. It's crazy.
Next thing, the Russian offensive. Let's talk about that. We got about 5 minutes before we're going to go over to Rockfin completely. But the Russian offensive, it seems to me that, and seems to me the move, they're hitting their infrastructure. They're going to collapse their infrastructure and all of that stuff, which of course the military needs. Needs electricity in the infrastructure too. They collapse all of that, and then they make their move with a 500,000 troops. It doesn't look like we're very far from that. Scott, your thoughts?
No, I mean, as I point out every chance I get, sometime within a month or so, 10 to 15 division equivalents of fresh Russian troops, trained, equipped, ready to rock, are arriving on the battlefield. At least 220,000 of them, maybe more. And Ukraine doesn't have anything to respond. They don't have any more reserves. They burned everything up. They're out of tanks. They're out of artillery. They're out of everything. And the pipeline is too far removed. And even if the pipeline could squeeze something out, the replenishment rate doesn't meet the burn rate. The Ukrainians are getting weaker. Meanwhile, the Russians are about to have 10 to 15 division equivalents show up on the battlefield. I did read something that was interesting that gave me pause. They said even though the winter will create an operational condition for Russia to launch offensive action, the Russians right now are in a situation where they just got to sit there and watch NATO die.
Yeah,
they don't have to do anything to watch Ukraine die. I mean, Ukraine dug their own grave. Literally, they dug their own grave. Now they're hanging themselves, and the Russians have to sit back and go, "Okay, go ahead." if the Russians actually launch an offensive, let's say Russia attacks in the winter and retakes Kherson, Russia's responsible for now hooking them up with electricity, hooking them up with energy, rebuilding the homes, take care of the people, and all this kind of stuff. And that's a big ask in the wintertime. So maybe Russia's just going to build up their forces, do some limited offensive operations, begin to prepare the battlefield, but wait until they get the maximum effect of this campaign. That maybe the best time to start the large-scale offensive operation would be in the spring. That's just something I read, and it caused me pause. I have to think about that a little bit more. I'm always one that believes that as soon as you get the military advantage, you pull the trigger. That the longer you wait, the more likely is the enemy is going to come up with a response. So, Russia's going to have this extraordinary tactical, operational, strategic advantage, military advantage that's going to be accruing sometime next month. I personally don't think they're going to sit there and do nothing with it. That would be silly. But that article did give me pause. It's something to think about, and it makes sense and to agree. Except that as a military guy, I just don't like I just don't like to sit on when I have every advantage here. I don't like to just sit around and do nothing and let the enemy go, oh gosh, he has 10 to 15 divisions. Let's build some defense in depth. Because every time the enemy does something like that, that's more of my guys that get killed. I'm sort of anti my guys dying. I'm very pro your guys dying. So, and I think Russian commanders think the same way, but it's this is a very political war. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, I remember this, and Vladimir Putin is a martial arts guy. You done a lot of training in my life in the medium, not a lot of training in self-defense. And, Vladimir Putin said a long time ago, and, this is a martial arts thing. If you know you got a fight coming, strike first. There's no way this guy's backed me into a corner and he's going to attack me. Then I'm backing up saying, I don't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble. And I'm looking over him, seeing what I'm going to hit first, because I'm going to hit first. But I want him to, no, sir, I don't want, you're backing me up. You're going to get struck. I'm looking at your eyes and your groin and your throat. Wham, wham, wham. There's some punches coming. So I'm thinking, if you're cocking a trigger like that, and this is you versus NATO, because this isn't about Ukraine, you might want to finish this thing off midwinter. Here's the other thing, Scott. They don't have to launch a massive attack. You put this big thing up and you start a rolling attack where you destroy everything in front of you and you move and destroy everything. Because part of this is you create this environment where they start evacuating their people. Well, now the people are out of the way and you can fight the army. And you destroy everything, move forward, and just keep destroying things and moving forward. It's obvious what's happening. They could take out the bridges behind them at the Dnieper River. And then at the river, take out the bridges and just push them up against the river and take them all out. Or here's the other part. Maybe they're not taking out the bridges because maybe at some point they want to use them to cross into Western Ukraine.
Well, that's the thing. I don't believe Russia will have sufficient force to solve the Ukraine puzzle in one fell swoop. The amount of manpower they have coming in, the 10 to 15 divisions worth, I think is sufficient to take Odessa, to take Kharkov, to take Nikolaev, to liberate the Donbass, take Dnipropetrovsk, and basically secure Ukraine up to the Dnieper River. But at that point in time, Russia will have to do a pause. Now, I think the pause they're going to do is going to be designed to give a Ukrainian general a chance to pop a bullet in Zelensky's head and say, we have a new team in town that wants to negotiate with you. And then whether or not Russia absorbs these territories or uses them as a negotiating chip to get what they want is another thing. But you want to have that negotiation when there's still the potential of meaningful Russian offensive military action, which means Russia has to control the calendar. If you delay this offensive too long, by the time you finish that phase, we may be right where we are right now with General Mud, and coming up to another lengthy operational pause gives the Ukrainians a chance to, take a pause, receive emergency reinforcements and things of that nature. That's why I agree with you. I think Russia's going to act sooner than later. I think they're going to start the offensive as soon as possible, and the Ukrainians are weak. They're very weak. They're weaker than the West is willing to acknowledge. And I think when the Russians come in, the time to strike is now.
And these, I'm hearing some rumors there's more missile strikes happening today. If you're going to attack something, you know how it is. You soften up the beachhead before the troops come ashore. You slam everything you can into that beach and all the way around so the guys can hopefully walk ashore. We've seen it happen. Well, where the guys have been able to walk ashore, and other times they encountered significant resistance. The way they're hitting them with these missile strikes looks to me like a softening up the beach action where pre-attack you're hitting everything you need to hit, you're closing everything down, you're making it as easy as possible for the offensive, and then when you get the other side down to like, okay, this is everything we want to hit, we're coming ashore and we're going to do an invade. And that's what all of these missile attacks appear to me Scott.
Well, I mean, most of them appear to be strategic in nature, shutting down power grids and things of that nature, as opposed to tactical. But I think we're going to see significant tactical strikes too. I just wouldn't want to be in the Ukrainian shoes right now. It's just a lose-lose proposition for them.
I think you're right. And something else I want to talk about. Alexander Mercouris made a good point the other day, and I want to talk about that. We're getting ready to switch over to Rockfin, and he said one of the things we're learning from this particular conflict is possibly the days of manned aircraft are kind of getting behind us, in that Russia using drones, the little putt drones that slam into things that are, it seems to me that the less technologically advanced they are, the more difficult they are to defend against. Missiles, etc., and advanced anti-aircraft, interlinked system, network system that China now has coming up with these drones where there's a manned aircraft, he's going to have like a swarm of drones with him to go ahead to defend him, to attack targets, to even if there's a missile coming, get in the way of it, block the missile, everything. So now this pilot has AI drones around him doing jamming, everything, to the point where it certainly appears that the days of the manned aircraft may be dwindling. At least, some manned aircraft maybe, but the days of them we're going in a different direction. And some of the things we're learning from this war. At any rate, I'm talking with Scott Ritter. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go over to the Rockfin channel. This is a Rockfin exclusive. I wanted to get people as much as possible involved in this, but you need to be a Rockfin member to see the rest of it. Again, to be a member on Rockfin, you can join, no charge. You'll see 99.9% of all of my stuff. However, I do one show a week with Scott Ritter from 9 to 10. I decided to give everybody at least half of the show today with everything going on, and then you have to be a member. Again, the $9.99 a month on Rockfin is only to see premium shows. And if you sign up for a year, you get 2 months free. And the reason they do that is there's no advertising on Rockfin. They got to have something to keep the channel, keep it going. And memberships, subscribers do that. If you got subscribers, if you've got advertisers, of course, as you know, you can't really have a free speech platform in this day and age. So those of you who can support a free speech platform, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Thanks a lot, everybody. In any way you want to.
Can I just add?
Sure, go ahead.
One thing before, because you started something, I just want to finish it before you shift.
Sure.
Drones versus manned aircraft. I'm a Top Gun fan, and I love the movie Maverick, and I'm always going to believe there's a role for a pilot.
All right.
There's a role for Tom Cruise, baby. You can't take him out of the picture.
That sounds good. All right, everybody. We're going over to Rockfin. Thank you. And Facebook is gone. And